See if we're live. Are we live? Yes, we are live. Welcome back for another episode of the Below the O-Line podcast. I'm your host, Joe Laney Pavlon. This is episode 139 of the show that has been going on for over 2 years. And for the first time, I'm fortunate to say, I can't see who hates it. Why? Because our friends at YouTube won't let us anymore. They took away the dislike button. Whatever the reason is, I think it's pathetic, and it just makes me feel less of a YouTuber, though this channel doesn't get too much love or hate. In the end, I'd like to get some feedback, and seeing the dislike button helps. I'd like to know what I'm doing wrong. I like to know how I can fix what I'm doing so I can become a better uh, videographer, a better podcaster, and YouTube basically give everybody the middle finger in favor of other ideas, intentions, whatever case may be. So I just think YouTube, you know, you're not a company I would like to represent. I mean, if this was a different situation, if this were like 10 years ago when YouTube was the best thing on planet Earth, I would give you guys a different answer. But with all that out of the way, this weekend we got a lot of action on the track. We're going to talk about the Bathurst 1000. I know that's the part of the podcast I really want to get into. It fires me up. It's one of my favorite races of the year. The 64th running of the Great Race in Australia. We're going to break that down, but we have Formula One to break down. Formula One World Championship usually seems like in the turbo hybrid era about this time of the year, it's always all said and done. Of course, with the exception of 2016, when Nico Rosberg took Lewis Hamilton to the cleaners and won the World Championship. Now, this year is a little bit different. We actually have competition outside of Mercedes for the World Drivers' Championship for the first time since 2013. And of course, yeah, that was a blowout by Vettel and Red Bull. But the case I'm trying to say is that I knew this was going to come around from the start of the World Championship this year, that each Grand Prix was going to be one better than the other, and it has been like that all year long. And here we are, the penultimate race, and there's a world championship on the line. It can be clinched this weekend. I'll explain how that can happen. But first, let's get into the scoop of the events. By the way, we didn't have anything to cover this past weekend, aside from the unfortunate news that this upcoming weekend's 9 hours of Kyalami is not going to happen. And that wasn't the inevitable decision that was being made by the South African government. Obviously, they cannot travel or bring the containers over, which sucks. I'd like to see cars at that circuit. Kyalami is a great track for an endurance race, and it close to the already abbreviated 3-race Intercontinental GT Challenge calendar. Now, this is in the way. It's a pretty unfortunate sight. But I'm not going to go on and on. This is a racing podcast, but yeah, there's what's going on, in case you know. And it didn't get any better with the virtual 9 hours of Kyalami either. I guess the server crashed and the race got put off midway through or something like that happened. I don't know what it was. I don't cover sim racing. I sim race on NASCAR Racing 2003 season in their online leagues that stick around these days. But I don't cover the actual events. And I'm going to say is that, I hope we don't have to go back to March of 2020. Whatever the case is, it's being taken out of proportion, and I think all of us need to be held accountable for watching too much TV, and also hold the TV accountable. But back to the point here. Another thing that's big on the topic is it's just honestly, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. We're racing in Saudi Arabia this weekend for the inaugural Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. We knew it was coming. It was a discussion. A lot of people, especially the insiders of Formula One, wanted to brush off, when asked what the impact of racing in a country like Saudi Arabia might be. Well, we're going to face that reality for the first time in a Formula One World Championship stage. It's an inaugural race at a street circuit. We didn't have too many street circuits this year. In fact, most of the races that have been wiped off were at street circuits, such as Australia and Singapore and whatnot. So obviously the Jeddah Street Circuit, which by the way has been late into being developed, your guess is as good as mine. What is this track going to look like? What's the racing product going to be with the World Championship on the line? All the unknowns. How are drivers going to break the ice with the circuit? And will we get a world drivers champion crowned leaving the Jeddah Street Circuit? And that is where the big question is, the elephant in the room that has to be addressed is, will we get our world championship clinched at Saudi Arabia? And not have Max Verstappen worry about driving for a championship in Abu Dhabi next week. That's all up for discussion, but the racing is what's going to determine all of that. And Lewis Hamilton in the past 2 races has done everything he can to stay in the fight and win his 8th world championship, a record-breaking achievement that has never been done in the 72-year history of Formula One World Championship racing. This is a true testament of driver, man, and machine, car and driver. And of course, let's not forget the teams and the equipment, everything coming together. This is the 2021 version of the Formula One World Championship at its finest. I knew right away after Bahrain testing, after the free practice sessions, when the lights went off and the checkered flag flew the round 1 of the season, that this was going to be a year like no other. And it certainly has. And I'm honestly saying that, I know it's not going to live up to what happened in 2012, but it's definitely given those characteristics of 2012, more like 2008, 2007, when we had different drivers from other directions. Not really like third, fourth party candidates going for this World Drivers' Championship, but it's coming to the end, and it's a sight that we haven't seen in Formula One in quite some time. Now, we can't compare apples to oranges here. All we can do is anticipate what's coming up ahead rather than look back and compare from almost a few eras ago on what could happen. I mean, obviously, we're not in the same era of close quarter world championship battles. In the turbo hybrid era, that's really not been the case. So don't cry over spilt milk. All I'm going to say is, to be fair, we just have to shut up and watch the racing product and enjoy what we have, because this is something that we may not get again in the next foreseeable future. We have a new car configuration kit, a new set of rules starting next year in 2022. What's that going to look like? Will we see another massive dynasty coming out of the woods? Because I don't think anybody was prepared for Mercedes to do this at the start of 2014. No. So, and that makes me say one more thing. Be careful what you wish for, because sometimes what you wish, and if you wish too much, it could be granted and you can't undo it. That said, let's look at the World Championship standings. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton looking for his 8th World Drivers' Championship. Max Verstappen, basically the only man left in the way between Hamilton and getting to the point of winning his record-breaking World Championship. But I will say, and I actually credit to Formula One because they had this all written out on their page. Max Verstappen can mathematically clinch the World Drivers' Championship by virtue of winning and getting the fastest lap in relation to Lewis Hamilton finishing 6th or lower. He cannot finish any worse than, or he has to finish better than 7th, no matter what happens or where Max finishes. Max has to finish 1st or 2nd, by the way, in all these situations. So Verstappen wins and gets the fastest lap. Hamilton finishes 6th or lower. Max Verstappen is world champion. Max Verstappen wins without getting the fastest lap, which is 1 extra point. Lewis Hamilton finishes 7th or lower. if Max Verstappen finishes in second place, now mind you, Max finishes in second. See, finishing first, you get 25 points. Second place, you get 18 points. Third, 15 points. 12 for fourth, 10 for fifth. Then from 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, it's 8, 6, 4, 2, and 1. And if you're in the top 10 to get the fastest lap, you get an extra point for the fastest lap. So take that as you will. So if Max Verstappen finishes in the second place at the end of the Grand Prix of Saudi Arabia, with Lewis Hamilton finishing 10th or worse, basically getting just 1 point or worse, and Verstappen gets 19 points, you do the math, Max is the champion. He clinches it. Or if Max Verstappen finishes second, regardless of getting the fastest lap, and Lewis Hamilton does not score any World Championship points, it's over. Max will win it. Now, the World Constructors Championship, I haven't seen any sheets that broke it down, but of course, the World Constructors Championship, it takes two from each respective team, Mercedes AMG F1 and of course Rebel Racing Honda. So all I'm going to say is that let's enjoy the racing product that we have. It's awesome. It's great stuff. And you know what? There are more positions that can be grabbed besides first and second. Everybody's going to be talking about first and second, Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton. But what about the other positions of the World Drivers' Championship? Let's look at third and fourth. Valtteri Bottas and Sergio Perez are separated by 13 points. Could Perez, and by the way, this is where the Constructors' Championship points are coming into play here. Could Bottas recover from that retirement and hang on to third in the World Drivers' Championship, or will he lose that to a very consistent Sergio Perez, who has finished no worse than fourth since back in Turkey? Now, Turkey was all the way back in round 16. Since then, he's finished third or fourth, no worse than fourth. Round 17, 18, 19, 20, and here we are in round 21. Very good numbers for Sergio Perez for what I've seen so far. And, of course, at the rate he's going, he could take third in the World Drivers' Championship. Now, look lower. You see fifth and sixth and someone seventh. Lando Norris at 153 points, 1 point ahead of Charles Leclerc. Now, Leclerc has his teammates to also worry about for possibly, getting the highest Ferrari driver finish. Carlos Sainz Jr. seems like everywhere that Leclerc is, Sainz is right there with them, so they always get the double points. Obviously, which is why McLaren has been struggling to retain third in the World Constructors' Championship. But Carlos Sainz Jr. could leap up to fifth in the World Drivers' Championship. It is a bit of a tall order, but it's reachable. At this point, Daniel Ricciardo probably can't get any higher than eighth from where he's at, but he could lose eighth to Pierre Gasly. What both drivers have been experiencing this year is the lack of consistent points finishes. That's why they're 8th and 9th in the World Drivers' Championship. But Fernando Alonso, well, I don't think he could reach Daniel Ricciardo for where Ricciardo sits in the points board. He could very well reach Pierre Gasly and take 9th in the World Drivers' Championship. Other spots to note, Esteban Ocon at 60 points. He could reach Fernando Alonso. That is a 17-point difference, but likewise, you kind of need a podium position to do that. So we'll see about that. Sebastian Vettel, as much as I love the guy, he's up and down this year. He could reach as high as 10th, but would probably need perfection. And honestly, I just don't see that happening right now with Vettel, unfortunately. So Sebastian Vettel, he might be able to get 11th, but I don't know if he could get 10th or higher for sure. Other positions in relation, of course, one spot beneath Vettel is Lance Stroll. Stroll is actually 9 points behind Vettel. And he could get, all it takes is one good race or one bad race, and your competitor is in the position he needs to be in to get the points, and that's all that's going to count. Yuki Tsunoda has been struggling to get points. All it takes is one phenomenal showing for George Russell. Same would go with Kimi Räikkönen, Nicolas Latifi, and Antonio Giovinazzi. And I don't know what else to say about Haas F1. You know what's going to happen from them. Now, if we look at the World Constructors' Championship, I will say that Mercedes, being 5 points ahead of Red Bull Racing Honda, they require right now, they need absolute perfection from both Hamilton and Bottas. They're going to need the fastest lap. They're going to need to be double podium positioning by the end of the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. If they want, listen, no one's clinching the World Constructors Championship until the checkered flag flies at Abu Dhabi. Next race, the final race of the year. So that's coming to the very end. That's a guarantee, mathematically speaking. Now we look further below, of course, McLaren Mercedes, they dropped, losing third in the WCC. Ferrari, very good points-wise, getting the double points finishes. In fact, they're on a streak of double points finishes date back to round 16 at Turkey. 297.5 points they're at. 258 points for McLaren. And McLaren has just been struggling to get the double points. And it's been quite hard, consistently speaking, ever since the 1-2 finish they had at the Italian Grand Prix this year. Alpine Renault, I would say the same, but hell, it's a great time to be an Alonso fan. And you know what? Fernando Alonso has been giving us a treat this year. Let's enjoy it while it's happening. Nice to see back on the podium, too. 137 points for Alpine. Of course, McLaren's going to be out of reach for Alpine. But AlphaTauri Honda might be able to take over that spot should they get good points finishes. But like I said earlier, Yuki Tsunoda has been having a rookie year filled with struggles, ups and downs. I don't think that's going to happen. You're going to need to have double points finishes with a mixture of some bad luck from your competitors of Alpine to have the Scuderia AlphaTauri squad moving up to P5 in the World Constructors Championship. Aston Martin Racing Mercedes, I don't think they're going to be able to catch AlphaTauri Honda by any means. They've just been struggling in the last few races. I don't know if they can even get the triple-digit number at the end of the year. That would be a tall order. Usually when one driver gets in the points, the other driver is out of it. And when I say points, I mean like not first, second, third, fourth, fifth. I mean like 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th. Mostly 7th, 8th, 9th, or 10th. Williams Mercedes. And 23 points. I will, real quick, I just want to give my heartfelt condolences out to the family and friends of the late Sir Frank Williams, who passed away at the age of 79, the founder of Williams Grand Prix Engineering, and one of the longest-running teams in Formula One to this day, of course, outside of Ferrari and McLaren. They have been the third longest constructor in Formula One as we speak. And Frank will be deeply missed. So, Williams did get 23 points this year. But their stretch of good races in the summer were short-lived. That's why they got up to 23. It might have to take some luck because there's only so much George Russell can do in that car. And that's essentially been the scoop of the year for them. Now, Nicholas Latifi hasn't been bad either, but it takes a little bit more than just a few 8th, 9th, or 10th place finishes. We'll see how this goes, and that's where Alfa Romeo Racing Ferrari come into play. Obviously, with 11 points, they've gotten it sporadically throughout several different races where they finished 8th, 10th 3 times between between both drivers, and then 8th and 8th. So if you just look at the circumstances that they've been in, it's pretty self-explainable. And as Ferrari, nothing else I have to say about them at this point. They've dug their own grave. I'm sorry to say. It makes me even more upset that Michael Andretti felt just shy at the 11th hour to making this deal by Sauber F1, bring in some better American presence to the sport. Because considering where Haas F1 is, it's hard to really relate to Haas F1 anymore. But that's for another discussion. We have to stay on track here. One thing I will say is that if there's anything that's been impressive this year, it's the maturity and the establishment of Max Verstappen and how Max Verstappen has played the cards right this year. He has observed Lewis Hamilton the best way possible. And it took years leading up to this. I mean, listen, Hamilton has been untouched. His constructor, Mercedes, have been untouched for almost for more than half a decade now. It's been that long. Max Verstappen. It's hard to believe he's, 23, 24 years old. 24 years old in 3 months. And he's not done. He's not done. I mean, 7 years in the bag and he's just 24. That's remarkable. Finished no better than third in the World Drivers' Championship before this year. Everyone talks about his first win, of course, being the first race he ran at Red Bull at the young age of 18, becoming the youngest ever winner in Formula One at the Spanish Grand Prix. But it took a lot more out of Max to mature fully, get himself fledged into being a leader, a team leader at Red Bull. And that is exactly how he's been ever since. Just a decent driver. This year, 9 wins, 16 podiums, 9 poles. He's led 1,003 laps, 1,103. Or actually, of those laps, he led 620. That's more than half the races. I'm sorry to get mixed up with that. Most points he's ever scored before this year were 278 in 2019 when he finished third. This year, he scored 352 points. That's a lot of points. His average start, average finish, 3.0, 4.4. That's just amazing. If you look at Lewis Hamilton, of course, no need for an explanation on Hamilton, but looking at his numbers this year, and I want to compare it to last year just to say where this is going. See, Hamilton, of course, this year so far, 7 wins compared to Max's 9, 15 podiums compared to Max Verstappen's 16. That's nearly evenly matched. Max Verstappen's picking up the poles. He's got 9 poles this year. Hamilton just 4. That's very unlike him. Of the 1,161 laps that Hamilton has completed, he's led for 228 laps compared to, of course, Verstappen's 620. So just consider the numbers there. And he's scored 344 points. His average start is 3.3 compared to 3.0. That's 3 decimal places, or that's 0.3 beneath Verstappen. 3.6 as an average finish. That is better than Max Verstappen's average finish, which is 4.4. I know it's a slim number, but that's huge. This is where it counts for Hamilton. Fun fact, Hamilton's average finish is just 0.3 worse than Verstappen's average finish this year entirely, 4.7. Shows you how incredible Lewis Hamilton's numbers are. I know it gets old talking about it, but it's never old. I mean, he's a one of a kind. Look at last year, and Lewis Hamilton, when he won the World Championship for a 7th time, clinched it with like 3 races to go, and missed one of the races after clinching. Hamilton scored only 347 points while winning 11 of the 16 races he ran. That's 5 races where he didn't win. Verstappen has 620 points this year. Or 352 points, I meant. See, I'm reading it wrong. But you get the point. I don't have to do all the explaining. Everyone's watching the World Championship this year. If you're not watching it, I don't know what you're doing. You might just have to reevaluate yourself. Before we get into other events, such as the Snowball Derby, I want to dive deep into that one. There is something that we haven't seen since September, and that, of course, is the companions of Formula One. The FIA Formula 2 Championship is back at the Jeddah Street Circuit. And the Jeddah Street Circuit, of course, being accompanying the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix weekend. And What do we know? We don't know much, except for the fact that it's a skinny looking track based off the map that I've seen, let alone putting anybody out there on the track. So let's go back to the last time we had Formula 2, and that was in Sochi Autodrome, accompanying the Russian Grand Prix. We didn't have a sprint race 2 due to poor weather, but we had a sprint race 1 and a feature race, and of course, Oscar Piastri still coming out. He's always good to come out on top. Right now, that's where he is. He has 178 points, has 36 points over Guanyu Zhou, over a full feature race amount of points that you can get if you include pole and fastest lap together. That would be 6 bonus points, 25 plus 6. You do the math. Still a lot of work to do for Guanyu Zhou to win the Formula 2 championship. Now, of course, we have the sprint races, 2 of each, and a feature race that makes up our 3-race weekend. And then they'll do it again at the Marina circuit next weekend for the week 8 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix closing event. Now, likewise, I said, you win these sprint races, you're not going to mean as much in terms of the points. You get 15 points, 15, 12, 10 on the podium, fastest lap plus 2. Fourth, you get 8. Fifth, you get 6. Sixth, you get 4. Seventh and 8th, 2 and 1. Fastest lap, and you're in there, you get 2 points. And if the fastest lap driver doesn't finish there, the second fastest lap, or whoever is in there that was in the points finishers that had the fastest lap will get it. So it's always inevitable. You want to have that fastest lap. And in the feature race, 25 points, 18 points, 15 points, 12 points for 4th. And then 5th place, 10, 6th place, 8, 7th place, 6, 8th place, 4, 9th place, 2, 10th place, 1. You win the pole for the sprint race, or I'm sorry, the feature race, you get 4 points. That's a lot of points. And fastest lap, you get 2 points. You could get 25, 6. You get 31 points out of a feature race. And that's exactly what Oscar Piastri has to do to win this championship and seal it up. The earlier, the better. Now, Robert Schwartzman in 3rd with 135 points. Unfortunately, it looks like it's slipping away for him. Daniel Ticktum in 4th with 129 points. A nice late season charge, but he might not get as high or higher than 3rd or even 2nd. He could get to 2nd. It's not out of the picture. And Teo Porcher, unfortunately, his good runs from the spring have just not translated since his sprint race 1 win at Monza. But he is holding ground to stay in the top 5 and might just successfully do it. Other drivers, Yuri Vips, 102 points. 7th place, Jaron Jaruvula, 96 points. 8th place, Liam Lawson, 80 points. 9th place, Filip Drugovich with 59 points. And 10th place, of course, being Richard Bershore with 55 points. So take it as you will. Team championship right now looks to be all Prema right now, and I think they clinched it. Prema and Power Team, I think they clinched it already. I don't know if they did, but they are pretty much getting there. It's all but on in their end. If they keep doing what they're doing, it's pretty much in their hands. But with all that said and done, Formula 2 is going to be fun to watch, and I'm sure the guys at F1, they're going to be taking a lot of notes, even from the little sprint races in comparison to the long Grand Prix distance. It counts. They need to watch what's happening. Obviously, this is a street circuit. No room to mess up on a street circuit, especially when you've never been in it before. And at this time of the year, you punt off, hit the wall, or anything happens like that, you're paying the full price. And that's what happens on street circuits. And, funny enough, last week we were talking about the Macau Grand Prix. Well, there's no room for error now. And if Lewis Hamilton stays in this World Championship fight, and if it does come down to the final race at Abu Dhabi, well, we still have more barriers with the new edited version of the Yas Marina circuit. But that's for another discussion. I will get into that later. As for the Formula 2 guys, Oscar Piastri, someone please consider putting them into a full-time F1 ride, because a guy can drive a damn race car. And he could very well be the next best thing out of Australia. And that's where my next discussion will be real soon. I will discuss that after another race. Well, this one being an American one. So let's do that real quick. And actually, we'll take our time into that as well. So let's do that instead. Of course, being it. What more can I say about this race? The Snowball Derby, held in the Florida's Panhandle at a chilly Pensacola, Florida. Usually temperatures average around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit around this time of the year. With a cold racetrack and cold tires, the tempers are always hot and the action is boiling. Every time they come to the track at the Five Flags Speedway, you are treated to some of the best neck and neck short track late model stock car racing. The Snowball Derby is one of the premier races in the late model short track calendar. And the entry list continues to thrive each and every day. Compared to last week's podcast, there are more entries that have been signed up on this list. It's very easy to get in. You just have to have your fundings in a car that meets the requirements. And bam, you can very well put yourself in a position to make the big race. And if you don't have that, then you still have a race on Saturday to compete for in the Snowflake 100, which that is also another event we will have to discuss on our own. Let's get into the history of this historic event, the Snowball Derby. Of course, knowing the time of the year, teams want to find a place to have a big race during the majority of stock car racing calendars off season. So what better than to have the race held the first weekend of December, after Thanksgiving, after NASCAR, after the majority of local short track seasons come to an end because of obviously December weather. They come down to Florida in the Panhandle. And let's just say when you go to the Panhandle at this time of the year, you're not wearing flip-flops and going to the beach or the Panhandle beach, the Gulf. You're not kicking it back and getting a suntan. You're pretty much bundled up at a short track, ready to watch the young guns and some of the top dogs and veterans, all kinds of backgrounds of drivers. They come around and race the Snowball Derby. It's a fun event. You never know what you're going to get in each year's edition of the race. Let's take a look at the history of this event, the Snowball Derby. So, this race, of course, was won last year by Ty Majeski. He had a huge victory. It was one that he wanted to check off the list badly. Finally got it done. The first race was held in 1968. It was won by Wayne Needigan Sr. But there are no drivers who have ever won more than twice besides the one and only Rich Bickle. Rich Bickle from Wisconsin is one of the finest short track drivers around the world. Age 60 from Edgerton, he has won the Slinger Nationals 4 times and the Snowball Derby 5 times. He's also a 2-time National Short Track Championship winner at Rockford Speedway in Illinois from 1990 and 20 years later in 2010. He may not have ever won a NASCAR Cup race, but he is certainly a fine driver to say the least. He could drive the wheels off a car, and guess what? His career is starting to come to an end. He did announce that there's a few more races left he's got. One of them is the Snowball Derby. He's on the list. He's got 5 wins. And, of course, likewise, the aforementioned Wayne Needigan Sr., Dickie Davis, Freddie Fryer, Gary St. Amant, Bobby Gill, Audrey Grill, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, and Eric Jones are all 2-time winners, aside from, of course, the 5-time winner of Rich Bickle. It shows how hard it is to win this race. So if you win it again, it's a big accomplishment, just based off, winning it once. You win it again, it is huge. But let's look at some of the winners of this race that that pop up and come to mind each time you look at it. Let's talk Gary Ballou, 1980. Gary Ballou, of course, from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, not too far from me, is one of the most incredible storied drivers in the history of stock car racing. In fact, there was one time that he was put in jail for 45 and a half months. He was a pretty big drug trafficker. I guess he had to learn how to. I guess he learned a little bit too late on how to go fast, not for the right reasons, but to smuggle things and not get in trouble for it. But that was Gary Ballou. He did manage to win it in 1980. Dave Mader III, 1978. Considered to be one of the biggest wins of his career. Let's talk about Pete Hamilton, the late, great Pete Hamilton. Friday Hassler. Gene Morgan. Butch Lindley. How about Butch Lindley? The late Butch Lindley. You know, of course, he was taken from us way too soon. Had a brilliant career. And very well could have won a few NASCAR Busch Series championships if he were to have lived longer than he did. But there's another name. Go through the 90s. Who else has won this race here? Ted Musgrave, Truck Series champion. Very experienced driver. Butch Miller. Rick Crawford. Forget that guy. Gary St. Amant. There's another name. Gary St. Amant, of course, almost 60 years old. He's won the Winchester 400 twice. Snowflake 100. He's won the All-American 400. He's a ASA champion twice. Remember, the ASA was a late model stock car racing series that was around until the 2000s. A very good driver. Underrated, I think. You know, most of these drivers, of course, you think in relation to the successful NASCAR Cup drivers, and you're like, oh, who are they? Well, they're great drivers of their own. I mean, if you're in the short track racing scene and you see these names, they are big names to you. They have won huge races. They're high-paying events in late model stock cars, in all kinds of vehicles. Listen, this is short track racing in a nutshell. They race for the money. They race for the big prize. Let's go on the list here. Female drivers: Tammy Jo Kirk, Johanna Long, twice. Actually, they won it once each, but there's been two occasions of a female driver winning in the Snowball Derby. Of course, Tammy Jo Kirk in 1994, a very experienced driver in her time. In fact, she started racing on two wheels. And then, of course, Johanna Long Robbins won it in 2010 in a very epic way. Followed that by 2011, and we have more history being made, and Chase Elliott being the youngest winner of the Snowball Derby history. I mean, I don't even think the guy was in high school yet when he won the Snowball Derby. But then again, he was absolutely phenomenal, and I knew right from there a star was born. Same could be said about Eric Jones in 2012 and again in 2013. Eric Jones' Cup Series career is all thanks due to the team that his late father put together at the Snowball Derby, where Eric Jones, shockingly high school kid, beats Kyle Busch, one of the best drivers ever on these kinds of tracks. And what does Kyle Busch do in response? Signs him up for a Truck Series ride right for the next year, and the rest is history. He's now a well-established Cup Series driver as we speak in his 20s. Let's continue on in the list here. John Henry Nemechek. He won it in 2014. Christian Eckes. Look where he is at. Noah Gragson. Travis Braden. Ty Majeski. I mean, do I need to say more? I don't think so. But all I have to say is that this is just one of many names that are out there that can put everyone to the task, and we'll see who's up for it this year. I want to see the entry list. I have it up here. Who do I think wins the Snowball Derby? Well, first, you have to make the race. I don't even know how many drivers make the race, but usually it's like a good 35 to 36 drivers. I could pull it up and see last year. Exhibition unclassified. You go on Racing Reference and you go to the bottom of the page. It'll give you routes. You can go to Exhibition unclassified, and then I'm just going to pull up. See if Snowball Derby. Yep, 2018. I guess they didn't post 2019, 2020 Snowball Derby on the website, but I guess 36 make the race, and a lot of guys fail to qualify. So, yeah, take that as you will. I'm just going to narrow down my predictions because there's one of me, and I'm not having, unfortunately, we don't have Justin or Danny to challenge these predictions, so I have to challenge myself. So I'm just looking here, seeing some names. I'm going to pick 5 names, and then I'm going to narrow it down. First name I'm going to take out of this list is Bubba Pollard. He is a driver that is absolutely phenomenal on the short tracks all around the United States. He's been there and done that, but he's never won. He has not won the Snowball Derby, and it would be huge to see him win. Grant Enfinger, a local favorite. Eric Jones, Stephen Nasse. Stephen Nasse is a driver that has actually physically won the race, but got disqualified due to an infraction in 2019. And last but not least, Corey Heim. What more can I say about Corey Heim? He's the driver that stood between Ty Gibbs and the inevitable ARCA championship he was going to win. I mean, that he held on to Ty Gibbs that long for that many races, it's incredible. So let's narrow the picks down. I'm going to go choose 3. Corey Heim, Stephen Nasse, and Eric Jones. Now, which one of these 3 drivers do I have in prediction? Who's this gonna be? The winner of the Snowball Derby. My pick, the 2021 Snowball Derby champion, will be Eric Jones. He'll be the first driver other than Rich Bickle to win the race more than twice. And obviously, if he could win it almost a decade ago as just some high school sophomore in an underfunded car prepared by his late father, then he can certainly win it today. As a more mature, established, experienced driver, there's no reason why he can't win it, but it's going to be a tough fight from start to finish. But let's not forget other drivers like Luke Fenhouse, the winner of the Slinger Nationals from this year in Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, they seem to produce a lot of great short track drivers, that's for sure. But then again, let's let the racing do the talking. When the green flag drops, that's when the race begins. And when the checkered flag flies, the race ends. And it takes 300 laps to determine a winner at the Snowball Derby. Well, let's look at the companion events. Obviously, the Pro Late Model Snowflake 100. I'm going to narrow down some drivers on that event as well. Should they make the race and race it? Who would I think wins it? There's 62 total entries for that event on Saturday the 4th. Of course, the big race is on Sunday, but Saturday, the Snowflake 100 is nothing shy of prestigious and competitive on its own. I'm going to point out 5 drivers, 5 drivers that I think will be a factor to win this race, assuming all of them make it. Driver number 1, Johanna Long-Robbins. She won the 2010 Snowball Derby, the big race on Sunday, 11 years ago. I think, she comes from Pensacola, Florida, has turned more laps around this track more than anybody else, I assume. It would be hard to look ahead of Johanna Long-Robbins. Let's continue with the predictions. Let's see here. Noah Gragson. He won the big race in 2018, of course, the Snowball Derby. I think, he's a great short track driver. He should be in it at the end. Traden Lapsevich from Grimsby, the Canadian driver, has been very impressive in this year's Pinty Series, of course, in almost all the short track races. I think he comes from a racing family. That's an absolutely positive thing. He's going to have to work hard to win it. So will everybody. I'm going to point out 2 more drivers, 2 more potential threats to win this race. Pensacola, Florida's Derek Griffin. And last but not least, Derek Thorne. Derek Thorne is a driver that's very experienced. He comes from Bakersfield, California, but can turn around any track and make it his. I'm going to narrow it down to 3 drivers. Johanna Long-Robbins, Traden Lapsevich, Noah Gragson. Who do I think is going to win the Snowflake 100? The 2021 Snowflake 100 will go to Noah Gragson. I think he's got what it takes to get the job done. We'll see how that goes. Let's see what the other events have for this weekend. I know they have several events. Of course, Modifieds have a showing on the 3rd. Then the Outlaws will have a race on the 4th with a pretty sizable entry list of 39 cars. Pro Trucks will hold a race on the 3rd of December with 21 entries. The Sportsman division on December 2nd, which is actually about 4 days from now, 15 entries. Pure Stock will race on the 2nd with 16 entries. So there you have it. A lot of racing. A lot of trophies on the line in Pensacola, Florida this weekend. I'd say enjoy the race. Just enjoy it, because there's nothing like watching the Snowball every year. But there's one more event that's coming up that I am just, it's hard not to grin, but it's here. It's the 2021 Repco Bathurst 1000, what they call the Great Race in Australia. And how awesome is it to just have the Drivers' Championship and the Team's Championship for Supercars be clinched before the weekend even starts. So basically all they have to think about is the Bathurst 1000. Forget about championship driving and all that. That's off the table. All there's left is the race itself and the glory of winning the 64th annual Bathurst 1000 at the famous Mountain Panorama Motor Racing Circuit in Bathurst, New South Wales. So let's take a look at the history of this prestigious race. And we're going to get started with the history of the event. The Bathurst 1000 was a race that came together as the Phillip Island 500 in 1960. And basically the goal was to have teams bring out the best of production cars sold in Australia to the track, and the best guy after 500 kilometers wins. It was a simple concept, much like how NASCAR began in the 1940s and 50s. But that continued on into another facility, Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit. So the first race was held in 1960 with the late John Roxburgh and Frank Coad, who recently passed away this past week. And they drove a Vauxhall Cresta to 167 laps in 8 hours, 19 minutes, and 59 seconds. The average race speed was 96.5 kilometers an hour, just 60 miles per hour. Think about the difference here. 3 more races were held at Phillip Island before being relocated to Bathurst for the Mount Panorama 500. The big mountain was finally put to the test. That race was won by Bob Jane and Harry Firth. The two drove a Ford Cortina Mark I GT. One of Ford's most internationally successful brands was the Cortina. And they actually won it twice, actually with another driver, 64. Then 65, the Cortina continued to win. And then the Morris Cooper S, which is now known as the Mini Cooper, won in 66. It took a few more years before the distance changed. It started in 1973. 1973, the inaugural Bathurst 1000 was born. The race got moved 500 more kilometers, and it became the pure test of man and machine, driver and car, crew and car, and equipment. How much could the car's equipment hold a track like Bathurst, a narrow circuit that is determined by elevation, mass de-elevation at certain portions of the track, and do it for 163 laps, 161 laps. The first ever 1,000 kilometer race at Bathurst was 1973 and was won by Alan Moffat and Ian Giogan. They drove a Ford Falcon XA GT hardtop, a muscle car that was produced solely for Australia's division of Ford, a nameplate that would go on for the next 45 plus years in succession. And of course, during that time, we saw Holden come to life, the major brand of General Motors for the Australian division. Since then, Holden and Ford have been in one of the most brutal rivalries of Australian touring car history, the history of Australian touring car racing, that basically spiraled into today's Australian Supercar Series. And while we know Holden's years are about to be numbered, we know that they have put so much to the test in the history of this event. It always matters for the manufacturers because there's so much pride in winning the Bathurst 1000. And, of course, the theme of win on Sunday, sell money is huge with this style of racing. And that's one thing I've learned as a huge fanatic of the history of motor racing, is how much representation matters of cars. I mean, you look further in 1985, Jaguar won with the XJS. It was the first manufacturer in the 1,000 kilometer history of the Bathurst 1000 to have won outside of the Australian nameplates. Armin Hane and John Goss were the drivers. And of course, going into the 90s, how could we forget the Nissan Skyline GTR, the car they called Godzilla, when Mark Skaife and Jim Richards won back-to-back 1991, 1992. And, of course, the Australian fans were pushed over the edge with this. And that left a lasting legacy for the Nissan Skyline, car they called Godzilla. And during this whole time, we saw guys like Peter Brock, Dick Johnson, Jim Richards, John Bowe come through the ranks. Then we had Ingle, Jason Bright, Garth Tander, Mark Skaife. Skaife winning it several times. The last nameplate outside of Australia, of course, we had the two split races in 1997 and 1998. with TV disputes. BMW 320i with Jeff and David Brabham winning in 1997, and then Volvo in 1998 with Ricard Riddell and Jim Richards in the S40. Then everybody came back to the traditional Bathurst 1000 once a year starting back in 1999 and onwards. There has been nothing like it. And honestly, this year and every year it seems like as we go from, Scaife to Lowndes to Win Cup and to Tander, where is the next race going to look like? What's the next race going to look like? I can't speak anymore. What's the next page of history going to be written about? And I'm beyond ready to find that out. Let's look at the history of this event. Of course, last year we had the drivers of Shane Van Gisbergen and Garth Tanner winning the Bathurst 1000, driving a Holden ZB Commodore for 888 Race Engineering. And who has the most wins here? Easy guess. Your guess is easy as mine. Obviously, Peter Brock. Peter Brock won this race 9 times. They call him the King of the Mountain, Brocky. The greatest Aussie of all time. And to think how incredible of a driver he was. The late, great Peter Brock might have won the championship 3 times, but it was Bathurst where it was known that he could drive that over the mountain like no one else. And then with 7 wins, Jim Richards and Craig Lowndes. Craig Lowndes with 7 wins now. He's looking for an 8th to become the second on the all-time wins list. Then with 6 wins, we have Larry Perkins, Mark Scaife. Mark Scaife, of course, in the TV booth, Larry Perkins was just masterclass of the 80s. Mark Scaife raced across all the generations from the late 80s to the 90s and the 2000s and winning his last in 2010. With 5 wins at the Bathurst 1000, Stephen Richards. Stephen Richards, of course, being able to win it outright. Just like his father was able to do 7 times. He won it 5 times. And then here are the drivers with 4 wins in the Bathurst 1000. Bob Jane, Harry Firth, Alan Moffat, Greg Murphy, Jamie Win-Cup, Garth Tander. Garth Tander looking for his 5th to join Stephen Richards on that list. With 3 wins, Dick Johnson, who later became one of the most successful team owners in the history of supercars. And with 2 wins, John Goss, Alan Grice, John Bowe, Russell Ingall, Tony Longhurst, Rick Kelly, and Will Davison. Now, most wins by an entrant by a team. None other than the Holden dealer team, the team that was put together by the devoted customer himself, Peter Brock. The Holden dealer team was the masterclass of the Bathurst 1000, winning 9 times, all in the hands of Peter Brock. A team like no other, by a devoted team owner. Now that record could be tied this weekend by 888 Race Engineering, the modern day powerhouse of supercars competition. With 8 wins they have in the Bathurst 1000. They're looking for a 9th. With 7 wins, Ford Works team, the pretty much the works team for Ford in Australia. And of course, Walkinshaw and Andretti United, the team formerly known as the Holden Racing Team. They are continuing an ongoing legacy. With 4 wins is Dick Johnson Racing. 3 wins, Perkins Engineering and Gibson Motorsport. And with 2 wins, the Kmart dealer team and Ford Performance Racing, now known as Tickford Racing. Now, the manufacturers that have won here, of course, what manufacturers have won here? Obviously Holden. The Holden brand more wins than anybody else at 34 wins. And of course, their one and only nemesis that they've been defeating very successfully in the history of the great race, Ford, 21 wins. And then, of course, the third-party candidates, the best of the best was Nissan, 2 wins they had. And then these manufacturers had 1 win. Vauxhall, Mercedes-Benz, Morris, Jaguar, BMW, and Volvo. So there are the manufacturers that have won the great race. Most pole positions, Peter Brock, no question about that. 6 poles, 1974 to 1989, he's won them. Mark Skaife, he's won 5 poles between 1991 and 2006. And Al Moffat between 1970 and 1976 won 4 poles. Most poles by a manufacturer. Ford, believe it or not, leads this one. 2 more poles than Holden, 25 poles for them. Holden, 23 poles. And Nissan, 3 poles. All right. And, of course, the record for the pole time was a 203.397. And that was actually that was a 203.592. I apologize. That was by Cameron Waters last year in the Bathurst 1000. He broke the record in 2020. And yeah, it's hard to get in the 203s. You don't really see it at all in the race. I mean, the race record for a lap time in the race is actually a 204. That lap time in the race was actually a 204.7602 by Chaz Mostert in the Ford Mustang GT in 2019. So you can see the difference between qualifying trim and race trim. You better have the game right to run 161 laps. So forget the fastest lap in the race. You have to be fast in the top 10 shootout. Now, next up, most podiums. Craig Lowndes, 14 podiums. Of course, 7 of them were wins. That's half of the podiums he's got in the Bathurst 1000 are wins. Peter Brock, he spent more time on the podium winning in the middle of the top step than actually being on the podium, having 12 podiums. 12 podiums for Larry Perkins and 12 podiums for Jim Richards. And then let's talk about the race records. The race record for the fastest ever Bathurst 1000 was in 2018. And I'm a huge Craig Lowndes fan, so I marveled over this win. It was won by Craig Lowndes and Stephen Richards. They drove a Holden ZB Commodore to the win. The lap record in a race was in 2019. Like I said before, Chaz Mostert in a Ford Mustang GT. The largest winning margin in the race for the Bathurst 1000, 6 laps. Peter Brock and Jim Richards drove a Holden LX Torana SX E9X hatchback in 1979, a 6-lap winning margin. And the smallest winning margin, of course, has to be the 2016 race. That came right down to the wire with Will Davison and Jonathan Webb won driving a Holden VF Commodore in the 2016 Bathurst 1000. A controversial one, say what you want. Well, other records include, let's talk about some age milestones. We've seen drivers of all shapes and sizes, including ages. The oldest race winner in the Bathurst 1000 was in 2002 when Jim Richards drove a Holden VX Commodore to victory at the age of 55 years and 41 days, while the youngest race winner was just a year later in 2003 when Rick Kelly drove to victory driving a Holden VY Commodore at the age of 20 years and 268 days. This track is truly for everyone. If you can tame it, you are certainly amongst some of the best in the motorsports world. No question about it. Let's look at the entry list for this year's Bathurst 1000. No more Super Cheap Auto Bathurst 1000. It's called a Repco Bathurst 1000 for this year, as Repco is now the sponsor for the Supercars Championship and for the big race. Let's go by the number of the car. Number 2, Waukesha Andretti United. Holden Commodore ZB. Drivers Bryce Fullwood and Warren Luff. And let's talk about Warren Luff for a moment. 45 years of age. His Bathurst 1000 records. Third, twice in a row with Craig Lowndes. Third again with Garth Tander. Second 2 years in a row, and a third. Winning the Bathurst 1000 would be huge for him. For Tim Blanchard's team, yes, Tim is back in the car. Danny is here. Good timing here.
As soon as you heard us talking about Bathurst, I had to jump on.
I knew you had to. It's good, bud.
I'm all good, brother.
Awesome. So we were discussing the entries for the Bathurst 1000. I went through the history of the great race. We were just talking about Waukesha Andretti United, of course, Bryce Fullwood and Warren Luff. Warren Luff has been on the podium in the Bathurst 1000 several times on a consecutive basis here. 2 third-place finishes in a row from 2012 to 2013 with Triple Eight, a third for the Holden Racing team in 2015, and 2 back-to-back second-place finishes under the Waukesha banner with Scott Pye, and in 2020 getting a third-place finish. A win would be so huge for Warren Luff.
I think he would have it.
It's just based off how Bryce Fullwood would drive. I mean, he's a little bit iffy, especially in the Bathurst 1000, considering that he's finished no better than 20th and has finished DNF in the last 2 races. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe if they put Warren in the car to start the race.
Maybe he will probably end up. Would you say he would end up in the top 10, like just as a prediction?
Maybe. We'll see. That's for car number 2. Let's look at car number 3. That's our first forward on the list. Tim Blanchard, of course, Blanchard Racing Team, owned by Tim himself, will be with Tim Slade, and they'll be driving a Ford Mustang GT. Tim Slade has outperformed that car for this year, to be honest, and just looking at his record in the Bathurst 1000, he's never finished on the podium, but his best finish actually came in 5th last year with DJR Team Penske's co-driver Scott McLaughlin behind the wheel. He's done very well for himself in the Ford Mustangs since the Mustangs came out and since he left Holden. And of course, Let's not forget about Tim Blanchard. Tim Blanchard being in supercars for so long, yet never been able to win a race. His Bathurst 1000 numbers haven't been the best. I mean, he's never finished better than 10th, which was with 2016 with Macaulay Jones at Beartech Motorsport. But I think when he's under his own equipment, maybe there's better chemistry between man and machine.
Maybe. I think there will be like a slight chance. What do you think?
Listen, Tim Slade drove the wheels off the car. Remember the season started with Bathurst Super Sprint.
Oh, yeah. I remember that, man.
Tim Slade was like one of the fastest drivers out there, being the factory-supported Fords of DJR.
And on top of that, wasn't he in the top 10?
Yeah, and then the car broke down and took him out of the picture.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
And we all knew right from there that he would have definitely done better had he been able to run in race 2. But this is a good opportunity for Tim Slade. He has experience. This is a good place to see where this goes. Let's continue on car number 4, our first Brad Jones Racing entry. Jack Smith has never finished a Bathurst 1000 yet. David Wall, the co-driver, he is a very experienced driver, but has finished no better than 14th or 13th. I'm sorry. He's been out for 3 years, so it's tough to say. Next on the list, we have 2 different racing Fords coming up. Car number 5, Jack LeBrock and Zach Best, a rookie. They'll be driving, of course, the Ford Mustang GT. And then the other car, I think this car is going to definitely be a favorite, is the 6 car. James Moffitt and Cameron Waters. Cameron Waters, of course, putting out the record last year for the fastest ever lap in a qualifying session in 2020. He fell shy of the win, of course, when he finished second. He finished second to Shamie Giesbergen. That was a pretty big, tough pill to swallow.
Yeah.
But you know what was interesting?
What's that?
Was that in 2014, driving the Nissan Altima.
James Moffitt?
Yes, James Moffitt and Taz Douglas surprised everybody with a second place finish. And everyone's going to say...
We was not expecting that.
Everyone's going to say, well, Jamie Whitcup threw it away and gave everyone one spot. Yeah, but you still got second, and that's all what counts. And also, he's a very experienced driver. Of course, he's the son of Alan Moffitt. So
exactly.
Where all the experience
makes
has come from.
Makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Big time. Here's another entry I think is definitely going to be very impressive. And, of course, you had a lot of experience here. It's Kelly Grove Racing. Of course, this is the last year under the Kelly brothers' ownership before it's given all to Grove. Car number 7, Ford Mustang GT. Of course, Andre Heimgartner being the premier driver of that car. And remember, he got his first career win in round 9 of the season, which was at the Bend Super Sprint Race 1. As for his Bathurst record, it hasn't looked too good.
Oh, man.
And then here's where it gets better is you have Matt Campbell, Porsche factory driver. Phenomenal driver. I mean, talk about his history at Bathurst. In terms of the Bathurst 12 hours, let's talk about that for a moment. In 2014, he got a class podium driving a Fiat. In 2017, he finished second overall and won his class driving a Porsche 911 GT3R. Finished second in class in 2018 in a Porsche. And finally got to get that overall win in 2019 with Dirk Werner and Dennis Olsen driving for Earl Bammer's team. As for the Bathurst 1000 in 2017, his best finish was 5th, besides the DNF in 2016. So that looks very good for Matt Campbell. I think Andre Heimgartner is going to learn a lot from his co-driver. And, of course, how could we forget that he almost became a world champion in GT and won his class in Le Mans in 2018 driving a Porsche. He's done it all. He's won his class at the Dubai 24 hours in 2018. I mean, what hasn't he done? He's won the 12 hours at Sebring class this year. Impressive. I don't know what is. Petit Le Mans class win last year. I think I said more than I need to say about Matt Campbell.
Yeah.
Moving on to the list here. Brad Jones Racing again. And I think this might be the best entry for Brad Jones Racing. Of course, the Holden Commodore ZB with Nick Percat and Dale Wood. Why Nick Percat? Well, Nick Percat got his first ever win in the Bathurst 1000 in 2011. In his first start, he was the co-driver to Garth Tander in 2011 for the Holden Racing team. And then he got 2 more podiums in 2014 for James Rosenberg Racing with Ollie Gavin as the co-driver. And then in 2016, in another Holden team with Lucas Dumbrell Motorsport with Cameron McConneville. So I think that's a good deal. And then let's talk Dale Wood for a moment. Dale Wood is a very experienced driver. However, he's never been on the podium at Bathurst. His best finish was 4th at Eurobus 2017. I think they should be a good underdog favorite.
Wait, you're asking who's the underdog?
Yeah, I'm thinking it's going to be the duo of Percat and Dale Wood.
Gosh.
Let's Talk Car 9 though. Car 9. This is the driver that has been taking the attention by storm in supercars, and that of course is Will Brown. Remember how hard he had to work to get his first career win, and he finally got it in supercars. 23-year-old Queensland native finally took his first career win in Sydney week 3, which was round 28 of the year. For Europe's Motorsport, he's definitely done well. It's just his lack of experience at Bathurst might be an issue. We'll see how it goes. He did win race 1 of the Bathurst round in Super 2 last year, so take that for what you will. By the way, we'll lay out the entire weekend schedule for you guys for the supercars, because this is a week-long action-packed weekend. It starts today over there. Tomorrow for us. Actually, maybe in a few hours, we'll get cars on track. It's going to be awesome. Let's continue on. Dick Johnson Racing's first entry, the number 11 car. Anton De Pasquale, Tony D'Alberto, and of course the factory-supported Ford Mustang GT. Anton De Pasquale, though, this year has been incredible. Talk about the time he spent at not Sebring, Sydney. I don't know. My head's still at Sebring. Sydney week 1, he wins the first race there. DQ'd the second race, completes the weekend with the win. Then he wins again 2 races later. Second place, wins, and then fourth. I mean, the guy's incredible. Best finish at Bathurst was in his time with Europe's Motorsport with Brody Kostecki last year. P9. I think there's going to be a lot of pressure for Anton De Pasquale to perform. But let's look at Tony D'Alberto. Tony D'Alberto. Very interesting driver. He has been racing in Bathurst since 2005, but has been on the podium once. And that was, of course, with DJR Team Penske's co-driver Fabian Coulthard in 2017. He finished P3. He just has to stay out of the wall because the Mount Panorama circuit does not forgive. Let's continue on. Todd Hazelwood, Dean Fiore. Hazelwood has done very well for himself, but he's got a lot of work to do to win Bathurst. And Dean Fiore. I think, Dean's going to be really happy if he gets a podium. We'll see how it goes. Back to the second entry for Dick Johnson Racing. This is the entry I think will be the best one out there for Ford. And, of course, that is the Will Davison, Alex Davison combination. Will Davison and Alex Davison are both brothers. They come from a historic racing family in Melbourne. And they're driving for a historic team and a historic car brand. I think it's going to be some historic things. Will Davison is a 2-time winner of the Bathurst 1000. He won in 2009 with Garth Tander, and he won with Jonathan Webb in 2016. He drove for Holden in both occasions. I think that's a very impressive thing, but he's got to do it in a Ford. And Alex Davison. He has never finished on the podium at the Bathurst 1000, but his best finish was in 4th with his brother Will in 2014, driving a Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG in 2014. So there's that. Team 18, Frosty, Mark Winterbottom, and Michael Crusoe. Those are very experienced drivers. Of course, Frosty won in 2013 with Steven Richards and that miraculous last lap pass over Jamie Whincup in the final lap, taking the win. And, that speaks volumes here. And Michael Crusoe, 38 years old, from Sydney, New South Wales. The guy had an immaculate go-karting career. But his best finish was with Gary Rogers Motorsport, a 3rd place finish with Lee Holdsworth. in a Holden Commodore, so take that as you will. And then finally, on the last entrance on this first page, we're going to take a look at this pair. Fabian Coulthard, Jonathan Webb, driving for Team Sydney and Holden. Fabian Coulthard, 39 years old, born in Burnley, England, but under the New Zealand flag, he moved to Auckland as a youngin. Know him best for his crash in 2010. I know that overshadows his performance, but hey, let's not forget he got a podium in 2017 with Tony D'Alberto. So take that as you will. But then again, Team Sydney does have some work to do. And Jonathan Webb, a former winner of the Bathurst 1000 from 2016. With Will Davison. See how that goes. With Coulthard this year, I don't expect too much for them, but never say never in this race. It's 161 long laps. You got to be there at the end. Now let's look at our second page here. Team 18 again, but this time with Scott Pye and James Golding. Scott Pye, 31 years of age from Adelaide. 2 runner-up finishes back-to-back with Walkinshaw and Andretti United 2017 and 2018, both with Warren Luff. He is a class winner in the 2012 12 Hours of Bathurst. He drove a Holden Commodore HSV VXR Turbo. Team Sydney, again, Gary Jacobson, Dylan O'Keefe. One Bathurst 1000 in the books. That was with Andre Heimgartner last year, Kelly Racing. Dylan O is going to have a lot of work on his plate in order to find glory at Bathurst. But Gary Jacobson is a driver that has a lot of experience at age 29 that he could very well work with. So we'll see where this goes. Gary Jacobson, he has a best finish at Bathurst in 2017 with BeerTech Motorsport. Jason Bright, that was his first start at Bathurst. So take that as you will. Walkinshaw and Andretti United. This is the entry that I think has a great shot to win this race. Chaz Mostert, Lee Holdsworth. Of course, Chaz from Melbourne. 29 years of age. Hard to believe he's going to be 30 next year. In 2014, Chaz won the Bathurst 1000 with Paul Morris. He won it with the dude in one of the most bizarre races I've ever seen. He's also competing for the TCR Australia Championship. So keep an eye on that. He's driving an Audi for Melbourne Performance Center. But he's never been on the podium again until last year when he finished third with Warren Luff. This time he has Lee Holdsworth as a co-driver. And that's what brings me to the next point is Lee Holdsworth from Melbourne, likewise. A long-time Holden driver, spent a few years outside of the Holden camp. Ford, Mercedes, likewise. Ford again. Now he's back. Only podium was in 2009 with Gary Rogers Motorsport with Michael Caruso. But the experience is really good. I think that's a favorite. That could very well be a favorite for the Bathurst 1000. Let's continue on to the next one. Car 26, more from Kelly Grove Racing. This, I think, will be their best entry. David Reynolds, Luke Yulden. I mean, that's like Mario and Luigi, in a sense. Of course, from Albury, New South Wales, David Reynolds won the 2017 Bathurst 1000 with Luke Yulden, driving for Yerbis Motorsport and Holden. Luke Yulden from Melbourne has been racing in the Bathurst 1000 since 2000. He only picked up 2 podiums, third in 2003 with Stephen Ellerly and Ford, and then again that win with David Reynolds with Yerbis Motorsport. I think the experience is going to come into play. He also finished 8th in the 2003, actually 8th overall, 6th in class in the 2003 Bathurst 24-hour race. Remember, Bathurst had two 24-hour races. I think it was two or three in the early 2000s. He won it, or not won it, but finished in that position with the late Alan Simonson, as well as Paul Stockel and Peter Hackett. Let's see if Danny is back. All right, Danny is back.
Yeah, sorry, I had to step out for a minute.
You're good. All right, now let's talk about Matt Stone Racing here. I know this is a team that's been around in supercars. They've never won any races, but they're still fairly new to supercars. Usually they're better nameplates for the Super 2, Super 3 championships, but they're on the big stage and they got Holdens, and I think this is an entry that I kind of like here. You have the Kostecki of Jake and Kurt. Jake Kostecki. Let's talk about Jake for a moment. He's never finished the Bathurst 1000 in both attempts that he's had. And as for Kurt, Kurt Kostecki has not fared out any better compared to his brother in 2020. He failed to finish it, completing 147 laps with Bryce Fullwood at Walkinshaw and Trader United. However, in 2020, in the Bathurst 12 hours, driving a Nissan GTR Nismo from 2015, the year model, he finished 5th in class, 21st overall, with Nissan. So take that as you will. That is some good experience, but you still need a little bit more to win a bigger race like this.
Right.
And then the sister car for Matt Stone Racing, Zane Goddard. I don't know what else to say. Failed to finish with Jake Kostecki last year at Matt Stone Racing. I don't think he's ever finished in the top 10. Well, actually finished top 10 twice this year. Sorry to say, still got to work harder a little bit more to win these races.
Yeah. But
he does have a co-driver, Jaden Ojeda, who I've been very optimistic about. Last year with Tyler Everingham, he finished 19th for Gary Rogers Motorsport. I guess they were a wild card entry last year, if I'm not mistaken. All right, here's the wild card entry. This is the wild card entry I've been longing to talk about. Okay. Car 39, 888 Race Engineering, Holden Commodore ZB with young hotshot Brock Feeney and the never-quitting successful veteran of one and only Russell Ingall, the 2005 Supercross champion who had to deal with 4 runner-up finishes from 1998, 99, 2001, and 2004. Right. And the 2-time Bathurst 1000 winner. Russell Ingall has been in the Bathurst 1000 since 1990. And it only took it until 1995 with Larry Perkins and Holden to win. And then again in 1997. He finished second in 1998 and 2002. But has never been on the podium since. And the last time he ran in the Bathurst 1000 was with Rick Kelly in a Nissan, also an L33, and that was a DNF with just a few laps to spare. Obviously, the numbers are just intriguing. You see how incredible of a career that Russell Ingall has. I know it's going to be a long shot, but you have the experience. I mean, there it is. You should take advantage of it, and I hope he does. And Brock Feeney, I'm going to be keeping an eye on him because he's taking over Jamie Wincup's full-time ride next year. And you know why I think Brock Feeney might have what it takes? Because last year in the Bathurst 12 hours, he won his class driving a Ford Mustang Mark II with Nick Perkett and Aaron Cameron for SRI, which is a Mark Cars Australia brand. And, of course, his Super 2 championship season that he's got this year has been phenomenal. He's just ready to put the cherry on top for the Bathurst weekend. 2 more races over there to spare. Wow, now, last year, Brock Feeney drove for Tickford Racing. He was under a Ford contract last year and drove with James Courtney to a 10th place finish. Not bad. I think that's a very impressive stat. And he's got probably the best teacher out there in Russell Ingall for this race. Let's continue on. We still have some few more entries left. Back to Tickford Racing for another entry. This is their third of 3 cars, and there's a lot of experience here written out here. Of course, James Courtney, the 2010 champion, of supercars. Won that 2010 championship for Dick Johnson Racing, had a phenomenal year. Has been in the sport since 2005. But he's never won the Bathurst 1000. In 2006, in 2008, and in 2007, he finished third, second, and third with Glenn Seaton and David Bassner twice for Stone Brothers Racing in the Ford Falcon. And he hasn't been on the podium again since 2019 with Jack Perkins in Waukesha Andretti United's Holden Commodore ZB. So take it as you will. James Courtney has his line around the track. He knows how to drive it. But he has to be there at the end. That's where he's been struggling. And then the co-driver, Thomas Randall, who has spent several years getting ready for the big stage. And I believe he's got a full-time Supercars championship ride for Tickford Racing this year. I think it's confirmed. But Thomas Randall, who is age 25, and that's a bit too old, I'd say. There's no such thing as being too old for racing in Super 2s for how he's been doing this year, or in the past years. The former Super 2 champion, Toyota Racing Series champion. That's an open wheel series in New Zealand. Just take it as you will. He's got what it takes. Do I think they can win? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, as a debut driver in 2019, he finished 9th with Lee Holdsworth at Tickford Racing. Then he went over to Brad Jones Racing with Nick Percat and finished 9 spots worse in 18th. And he's going to be back with Tickford Racing this year. And also the guy's been battling on and off the track with testicular cancer. He has put that to rest and now is ready to get back on the track. So that is good stuff. And Thomas Reynolds been doing good this year for the starts he's made with Tickford Racing. So all is well for him. Now, the big boys. Let's talk Triple Eight Race Engineering. We're going to go first into Car 88, the legendary Triple Eight Holden Commodore ZB, the Red Bull Ample Racing team, the team's champions, fresh off clinching it last week or 2 weeks ago. Jamie Whincup and Craig Lowndes. What more can I say about these guys? Let's start with Jamie Whincup. I mean, he's about to close out a full-time driving career for the ages. 7 championships, most of all time. 124 race wins, 226 podiums, 92 pole positions within 526 races. That's like 1/5 of his career he spent on the top step of the podium. Let's look at his stats in the Bathurst 1000. 2002 was his debut year. 2005, he got on the podium with Jason Richards with Tasman Motorsports and a Holden Commodore VZ. Then he moved to Triple Eight Race Engineering, where he's been ever since. During his time with them, of course, he was in a Ford until 2010 with Triple Eight. Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whincup won 3 times in a row. 06, 07, and 08. And, of course, that emotional race in 2006 when Craig Lowndes bid farewell to Peter Brock in the first race just weeks after the tragic death of Peter Brock was when Craig Lowndes and Jamie Whincup took the win. A race of the ages. Second place in 2010. And his only win in Holden at Le Mans, Bathurst, was with Paul Dumbrell in 2012.
Yeah.
And then
I was about to get to the part where he get dehydrated in 2014 after quite a big stint.
2013, he lost on the final lap to Mark Winterbottom. Finished second. And then 2014, the car, he had the race won, but then he ignored the team, ordering him to just stay conserved because he would have won either way, but he kept pushing too hard.
And that's how he got dehydrated.
The car got dehydrated because it ran out of fuel. But, yeah, that's what happened. And listen, Whincup's numbers aren't that bad. I mean, yeah, sure, 18th, of course, 2015. We know how 2016 went. They won it physically, but they had the time penalty, so it wasn't theirs. With Paul Dumbrell, 2017, a 20th. 2018, a wheel went off. God. 2019, his first Bathurst 1000 back with Craig Lowndes since 2009.
Yeah.
And it was a fourth place finish, not bad. And then their effort lasted only 32 laps last year because Win Cup botched it going up the hill.
Yeah, that sucked.
Now let's talk about the other man, Craig Lowndes, my all-time favorite driver, 47 years of age.
The king of the mountain.
Almost,
yeah. If he could get 2 more wins, he would tie Peter Brock.
And of course, as for Craig Lowndes, his illustrious career speaks volumes. 3 championships, Triple 8 race engineering, some of his finest races have been with him. In fact, he was the Holden Racing team for most of the years. Spent some time at Ford when he moved over to the Ford Performance Racing, or actually Gibbs Motorsport, the Ford Performance Racing, the Triple 8 Race Engineering. Lowndes, in his first ever year, 1994, with Brad Jones, P2. And then 2 years later, with Greg Murphy and the Holden Racing team, a win. He got second in 1999 with Cameron McConneville with HRT. And then in 2003 and 2004, Ford Performance Racing and Glenn Seaton, back-to-back runner-up finishes. And then in 2006, we all know what happened. The big win with Jamie Wynn Cup. And then 3 in a row. Just incredible stuff. And in 2010 with Mark Scaife, Triple 8 Race Engineering, in their first race, their first Bathurst 1000 with Holden for Triple 8, a win. Mark Scaife. That was miraculous. Then a second place in 2011. He almost won that race. Very close. Falling short to Garth Tander, now their teammates. Second, third with Warren Luff. Actually, after 2011, Mark Scaife retired, so Warren Luff came in. And Stephen Richards. Remember Stephen Richards, the son of Jim Richards, coming out of the wood and taking the win in 2015. Huge moment. And then in 2018, dominating it in the fastest recorded Bathurst 1000 in history. And as far as the Bathurst 12 Hours is concerned, he's gotten a class win in 1994, driving a Nissan Pulsar SSS with John and Phil Morris. In 2011, with Yost Racing, Audi Sport Yost Racing, second overall. In 2014, driving a Ferrari 458 GT3 with John Bowe, Peter Edwards, and Mika Salo, overall win. His Bathurst success is nothing shy of the great race. It's also in the February race, wherever the date is. 2017 won with Jamie Wynn Cup and Tony Violander. Maranello Motorsport. Those are phenomenal numbers. And he still has it. He still has gas left in the tank to keep going like this. We're going to continue on with more the entries. Brad Jones Racing. This is the entry, 96, the Coca-Cola car. Macaulay Jones. Need I say more about Macaulay Jones? I mean, his best finish was 7th at Bathurst, so take that as you will. Driving with Nick Percat. But yeah, Macaulay Jones better step it up. And Chris Pither, co-driver, the Kiwi, is back. Best finish of 4th, Dale Wood. And then, of course, car 97 for Triple 8 Race Engineering, the Red Bull Ampol Racing Team. Shane Van Gisbergen, the 2-time Supercars champion, crowned champion last round at Sydney Week 4.
Yeah.
Shane Van Gisbergen's career numbers are impressive at Bathurst, considering how he turned things around.
Yeah, especially with this year in the season opener.
Huge. I think he's got what it takes. By the way, Shane Van Gisbergen is the only driver to have won the Bathurst 1000, the Bathurst 12 hours and the Bathurst 6 hours. No driver has ever won all three of the crown jewel races held at Bathurst.
That's insane.
Remember, he won the Bathurst 6 hours this year. It's an annual event on Easter weekend.
Yeah.
He won BMW M4 with Shane Smolin and Robert Rubis. He won the Bathurst 12 hours with Techno Motorsport and McLaren with Alvaro Pronte and Jonathan Webb. Let's talk about his incredible career in sports cars. Yeah, that's another story on his own. Podium in class in the 2015 24 Hours of Daytona with Alex Job Racing and Porsche. See anything else? I think that's all I have to say about him. He's just great.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's see anything else. In 2020, last year with Garth Tander, he won the Bathurst 1000. After several years of trying, he finally got the big win. And now let's look at Garth Tander's career. Now, Garth Tander is, he comes from a racing family. His wife, Leanne Tander, also ran in the Bathurst 1000. 44 years old from Perth, Western Australia. 2007 series champion. 56 career wins. This guy is one of the best of the best.
Yeah.
Let's look at his stats in Bathurst with Jason Bargwanna in 2000 in a Holden prepared by Gary Rogers Motorsports. He won the race. And then in 2009 with Will Davison in Holden Racing Team. Won again. In 2011, he won it with Nick Percat, a young Nick Percat. And then, of course, getting his fourth with Shane Van Gisbergen last year. He also won, this is important to know, the 2002 24 Hours of Bathurst. That was a crown jewel event that lasted a few years. He won it with Stephen Richards, Nathan Pretty, and Cameron McConneville in the Holden Monero. And the very next year, second overall with the same three co-drivers. So if he can master this track under dark skies, and yeah, I think that's all I got to say about him. Just amazing stats. Garth Tander and Shane Van Gisbergen, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they win it again. One more prediction, or one more pair, that's Brody Kostecki and David Russell for Yerbis Motorsport. Now, Brody Kostecki, of course, coming straight from that racing family. The cousin of brothers Kurt and Jake Kostecki. 24 years of age. He's raced in the States. He's raced everywhere. Still knocking on the door for that first career win. But as for Bathurst, he got a best finish in ninth with Anton DePasquale last year in Yerbis Motorsport. David Russell. Nice to see him back. David Russell with all the stats he's had at Bathurst. He's never finished better than 8th in 2014 with Rick Kelly. And boy, that would be fun to watch. If they can find a way to pull through like we saw David Reynolds and Luke Yilden, that would be amazing. And I know Danny stepped out, unfortunately, but I'm going to make a prediction for who's going to win the 2021 Repco Bathurst 1000. And by the way, I'm going to list when the time frame for us for the race so that you know when it's going to happen here in the States. My pick, I'm going to narrow it down to three pairs. The first pair I'm going to choose for predictions. It's a Ford team with recent success, but one spot away would have been a win. Cameron Waters, James Moffitt, Tickford Racing, Ford Mustang GT. No question. Then second on this list, and I know it's going to be surprising, but on this list that I have is Will and Alex Davison. These brothers have been great at Bathurst, especially Will. Dick Johnson Racing in Ford, that's a team with experience. And then last but not least, of course, the pairing of Jamie Whincup and Craig Lowndes. Probably number one in terms of chemistry. That is a team to watch for from start to finish. And I'm going to make my prediction. The 2021 champion of the mountain, the Bathurst 1000, will be Jamie Whincup, Craig Lowndes. Whincup will get his 5th win at Bathurst. Lowndes will get his 8th and basically be one spot shy of Peter Brock on the all-time wins list. Talk about multi-generational talents in Craig Lowndes. He's won it in the 90s. He's won it in the 2000s. He's won it in the 2010s. As recent as 2018. That's not too far from now. And, of course, being in the ZB Commodore is going to be very helpful for Craig Lowndes. So that's part of my claim why I think it's going to work. Listen, the mistake that Whincup made last year could have been made by anybody, good or bad, best or worst. I'm not worried about Jamie Whincup's post-2012 Bathurst luck. I'm not worried at all. He'll find a way to turn it around. Sorry to the meme makers, but I'm just being real. Those are my predictions. Before I go, I wanted to bring up the timetables for the Bathurst 1000 so you can watch the great race. If you're smart enough like me to go ahead and pirate online streams. Let's see. Supercars Championship. You're pathetic, YouTube. Remove dislikes. I'll say that. Okay, here are the timetables, and I was going to say one other thing is pathetic is the assignments my professor gives out. Don't know why. It can just be a little more simpler. Okay, so practice 1 for the Bathurst 1000. Now there's going to be track activity from start to finish of the week. You do the time converting there. But as for the great race, free practice 1 will be at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time for all drivers. Practice 2, I guess additional drivers, I assume, is the co-drivers that have come out as listed co-drivers for this year's 1000. That's Thursday at 12:25 a.m. Eastern time. Practice 3 for those same drivers will be at Thursday at 6:40 p.m. Eastern time. Practice 4 for all drivers Thursday from 9:30 to 10:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then we're going to have Armor All qualifying Friday, 12:35 a.m. Eastern time. So that's Thursday going to Friday. And then a free practice session for the additional drivers at 6:15 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. And then later that evening, practice 6 at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time for all drivers. And then the cars are set for the top 10 shootout, which will determine pole position for the Bathurst 1000. If you've never watched the top 10 shootout, I'm going to say there's some of the most intense moments of racing I've ever seen. It's going to be at Saturday, so Friday going into Saturday for us, 1:05 a.m. Eastern time to 1:50 a.m. Eastern. Every driver gets one full lap to go all out on the mountain. It's breathtaking to watch. It's tense. It's frantic. There's no words to describe it other than just so unique, one of a kind. Then the warm-up session, of course. So for us, the race will be on Saturday. For them, the race will obviously be on Sunday. For us, 5:10 p.m. Eastern time to 5:30 p.m. Eastern time will be the morning warm-up, just 20 minutes of morning warm-ups. And then the race will start for us, U.S. Eastern time, Saturday at 8:15 p.m. Eastern time to 3 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday. I'll just say it's 8 p.m. Eastern because it's just going to roll into it. All the pre-race stuff. We got Super 2s, I think Super 3s, all all other events going on. I know there's a title fight there in Super 2. We'll let that roll on. But as for the main stage, the championship is set. The team's championship is set. And all what's left is the great race. I can't wait to see what happens. Honestly, I don't know what to say. 161 laps around going around that track for, I'd say the average lap time would be about 2 minutes 6 seconds per lap. 2 drivers per car. It's a workout and a half. May the best one win. And for Formula One fans, it's going to be awesome. Regardless of the facility. I mean, listen, we got a world championship in our hands. It's coming down to the end. Will Max Verstappen clinch the world championship? Or will Lewis Hamilton do what he needs to stay in the fight and have the world title fight go down to the very last race at Abu Dhabi next weekend? We don't know what's happening, but it's going to be thrilling. Thank you all for watching episode 139 of the Below the Yellow Line podcast. We'll be back for episode 140. For my partner, Daniel Ford, I'm Joe Laney Pavlon, signing off. Have a good one.